it's a kind of anniversary. It's 10 years of collaboration of Euronews with Japan, which is a great honor for us, being here and addressing together with you some important issues. The idea is, before we will have a wonderful get-together to exchange in a lot of bilateral talks, to have a discussion about one of the most important topics you can discuss nowadays, because it's about economic security. And let's be honest, without economic security, there is no security at all. Because in my opinion, maybe that's the first point we can discuss. In my opinion, almost everything is built up on a secure economy, because that's what the connection point between the citizens, the people, and the politics is. And the politics is fixing the framework for it in an international context, and that's maybe the most important part of it, in very challenging times. So we had an advantage, because the ambassador, a meeting between the EU ambassador Jean-Éric Paquet and Japan's economic security minister Kimi Onoda a few days ago laid in a way the foundation for our discussion. Both sides underlined in that meeting that Japan is a key strategic partner and that EU and Japanese economic security concepts are closely aligned. That's a very, very good and strong thing. In times, a lot of forces are out there to try to divide countries and to divide and destroy relationships. Second, there was said that is a strong potential for deeper collaboration. That raises the question what kind of collaboration it could be. And intensifying the relationship to find alternative ways to decrease dependencies from other countries. That's, I think, is the most challenging part, because that's, in a way, the core thing we will discuss about. And if we put these puzzle pieces together, key strategic partner, closely aligned, deeper collaboration, and find alternative ways, then we have, in a way, the key questions for our discussion. And I'm very happy that we have, and honored in the same moment, to have very, very distinguished panelists. And so I would like to say to you, please come to the stage. At first, Adeline Hinderer. She is, as you know, maybe here, it's a home game for her, because she is Minister Counselor here in the delegation, and she covers together with her team economic issues. And that's, in a way, she's the mastermind of the question when it comes down to what we're discussing here. She's skeptical, but you will see I'm right. So please welcome Adeline Hinderer. So I'm pretty sure the European Union has a very, very strong representative, and so it's good that Japan has another very, very strong representative. And please welcome Takuma Inamura, Director in charge of economic security from the Meiji of Japan. So welcome. The European Union and Japan, it's good to have both sides of a relationship. And it's not a metaphor that they are not sitting close together. It's only because we wanted to have Mrs. Hinderer in the middle of this. So it's not a political issue, if you think. So maybe it's only my journalistic senses to see already this. Then please welcome Mr. Shin Oya. He is visiting senior research fellow from the Institute of Geoeconomics in Japan. That's the middleman, in a way. And I'm very happy that Mathieu Duchatel is joining us, the Director of International Studies at Institut Montaigne, and, which is an additional interesting information, he spends 50% of his time in Taiwan. So that sharpens maybe his view on our topic. And last but not least, of course, but he was, I can share the secret with you, he was a bit 1 or 2 minutes too late, because he is coming directly from Europe, from Brussels. So please welcome Koei Kubo, Senior Manager in charge for economy at Kairan, Europe expert, coming back from Brussels right now to share our podium. Thank you very much. when it comes down to economic security, and you are all more or less experts in it or have an overview about it, there are a lot of definitions when you try to study this topic. And so I think we can, starting by grounding the conversation a bit. What do you, Adeline, actually mean when you say economic security?
Yes, so economic security, I think in Europe, and some of you will know that, we've had an economic security strategy since 2023. And back then, we put it under 3 pillars. So we had the promote pillar, supporting strategic industries, the protect pillar, through, for instance, export control or investment screening, and the partner approach, which is working, for instance, with our partners like Japan. Recently, very recently, actually, last night, Tokyo time, we just published a new economic security strategy. It wasn't planned to occur. We didn't.
Of course it was.
And I wish it was a few days ago. That would have been my preference.
Come on, we prepared this especially for this moment.
So last night, actually, we became a bit more precise in our definition of economic security. And I had to note it down to make sure I don't mess it up. But what we explain now in this new communication is that the EU is trying to achieve its security through a strong, dynamic, and resilient economy by anticipating, deterring, or preventing existing or potential threats that would be created by the EU's economic relationship with the rest of the world. So I think that's not a definition, but a good framework. And I think 2 important parts that we didn't make as explicitly before. We also explained that to achieve that, we need to stay ahead in terms of critical technologies, critical services, critical manufacturing. And also, we make it very clear that reducing dependencies, addressing vulnerabilities requires sometimes to pay more than what we did before. So I think now in Europe we have a slightly more expanded definition of economic security and how we move.
So there is a lot of positive feedback I see in your reaction, Takuma Inamura. What from a Japanese point of view is economic security?
So the word economic security is quite wide scope, has a very wide scope, and it's a little bit difficult to precisely define and draw a bright line between economic security and security, because the line between security and economic security is changing depending on the geopolitical situation or progress in technology. So, but we can safely say that this is a policy, a kind of expansion of security policy toward economic area. So we can use our economic policy to protect our country in terms to enhance our level of security policy. So these two are intertwined, but we can say that the area of economic security is expanding, and even in last 3 years, I think every year we create new act in terms of, say, like cybersecurity or protection of information security. So we are updating our policy and expanding our area of economic security policy to cope with the current situation.
Gohei Kubo, from a point of view of private companies, maybe the whole discussion about economic security is sometimes a bit strange or difficult to understand. What would be your definition of economic security with this private company perspective?
Well, it's, as the word says, I think it's an area that economics and security overlaps. So, I am from a business organization, and as business, we conduct, each company conducts their business every day. But in considering those activities, they have to consider several risks. And I think that economic security is an area that those risks take place by through the intention of, or no, or the objective from security viewpoints. And so I think that could take two ways to influence companies. One is that we have to defend ourselves, like from, for example, like country-related cyber attacks or espionage. So from those activities, companies have to defend themselves. That's one point important area for economic security, and I think those are the domain that many policies are trying to cover. And but from business perspective, I think there is another viewpoint, and that is to adopt to the policies that are taken from the viewpoint of economic security. Like, for example, when there is a trade restriction for certain important goods, or for example, when there is some additional procedure in making investments. We understand that those policies are necessary from economic security viewpoint, but from a company's perspective, adapting to those policies is another important aspect in considering economic security. So I think there are those two main perspectives from business side.
I have another question to this. Do you think that the politics is doing enough for the companies, or do you see there is a gap, and you would like to have, let's say it like this, you would like to have more support?
From our perspective, it's really difficult to understand whether a certain policy is enough or not to address security issues, because we never have much abundant information regarding security issues. That's what those informations are, what the government was supposed to have. But what we can do is, if there is a will to address those problem, and we would like that measure to be feasible in achieving certain goals. So if there is one goal, I think there will be multiple pathways to reach that goal, and we would like the government to take the most feasible approach from business perspective. In doing so, a close relationship between the public and private is really important. So I think it's really important to promote public-private partnership and have a close communication between the governmental side and the business side.
So I see you take notes. That means maybe it's a good moment to include you again in this discussion. So let us know what your notes are.
So I thought that the next question will come to me. So, well, yeah, and my colleague from Japanese Business Federation said we have some information we don't share with the Japanese companies. So it's always difficult. It's the same with European government, I think. So it's always difficult. We cannot disclose all the information, but we have to persuade Japanese business to take necessary action or bear the burden of some additional regulation. And so that was a very good point. But, well, fortunately or unfortunately, there are some situations where we clearly can explain the threat of economic security. So even in last half year, we see some strict export control of, say, semiconductor or rare earths. So these kind of things have a huge impact on Japanese business activity. And also there are some famous case of cyber attack on Japanese business. So we can now easily explain the cost of not doing the necessary action. So it may be good for us to persuade, but the requirement for the government to take more action is also high, so it makes us busier.
So thank you very much for this openness, and of course it's a, let's say, spicy and critical point. Dealing with informations, I'm very experienced with dealing with informations, and I can imagine from a government standpoint, sometimes you would like to involve others, but you cannot because it's a secret information and something like that. But when you hear now this, that was a kind of special point already, but we heard a lot of words like AI or cybersecurity or other words were mentioned in the definitions. From your point of view, which one is the most important in the discussion about economic security? It's a typical journalistic question because we like superlatives.
Yes, and I'm probably going to respond indirectly.
Yeah, because you're a scientist, so it's obvious.
You know, the way I see it, I'm thinking in terms of categories of risks, but also in terms of sectors. In terms of categories of risks, I see five. The first one is, and it's actually part of the European definition, the whole technology leakage issue has improved a lot in Europe thanks to the new instruments that have been developed or the ones that have been improved, like FDI screening has been constructed, export control has been improved, but there are still some issues. But it varies over technologies. It will be an issue for semiconductors still. The Nexperia story very recently in the news shows that there are still issues with technology leaving the European Union. Then if you take the second category, supply chain resilience, it will be a big issue for clean tech. The excessive dependence on China is a major question. Their export control, various practices put our clean tech adoption at risk. Then the third category of risk, critical infrastructure. I think we have made big progress when it comes to large infrastructure, like excessive leverage in ports, for example. It's no longer a major issue, but the question of telecommunication networks is still an issue. And for the fourth one, coercion, I think all sectors that are excessively dependent on one single export market can be at risk. And so finally, the fifth one that I see, we have lots of discussions about industrial policy in Europe. If you reverse it and turn it into a risk, we have a question of industrial hollowing out in some sectors. I think automotive comes to mind. Hollowing out is way too strong for the automotive sector, but there we have trade defense instruments to respond to the question, but the big threat there is excess capacity in relation to China.
So thanks for this, let's say, building up categories, because that shows that the topic is very complex and huge. And of course, we will deliver a kind of disappointment that we cannot tackle all of these. But let's start with a, let's say, turn around the paradigm. You mentioned some risks already, and my question to you, Mr. Oya, would be, when it comes down to the relationship between Japan and Europe, and when we are discussing the economic security, what threats are the most important ones? I come back to the quote you were quoting. This report is from our side, planned report for today, because there was mentioned growing external economic threats, of course, for the European Union in this, but what for this relationship? Alongside this relationship, what are the top three maybe we can collect the top 3 threats. Because when we are talking about security, obviously there must be big threats out there, otherwise we would not need more security.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think your question is related to definition issue 2. I think economic security is economic aspect of national security. And in old days, when we think about national security, it's, very simply just a number of soldiers. It was simple. But right now, there is a huge economic interlinkage, economic connection, and some country utilize this, interlinkage, weaponizing that economic relationship. Therefore, we have to be strong, we have to be strategically autonomous, and strategic indispensability is required. And coming back to your question, I think Europe and also Japan has common philosophy, common thinking. We respect rule, economic rule, and also that rule-based international order. So for us to cooperate together, we can have some strong response vis-a-vis coercive economic activity. So this is very important, and this is very general things, but I think this is very important. So by cooperating together, we become bigger and stronger, so cope with some countries' coercive economic activities. I think this is very important. And this is general things. There are many subsectors. One element is that rare earth, or semiconductor, or in some times that other specific technology kind of things, or industrial base. But the cooperation can, reduce vulnerability coming from specific countries' intentional usage of economic interlinkage. That's my thinking.
Okay, so let's try. Thank you for this explanation. Let's try to making a bit more, let's say, concrete. I mean, what is an extreme scenario you are worried about? So what is this, Adeline, when you try to answer? I'm pretty sure you have studies about this. What is the biggest threat? Everything collapses because there is no access to some materials anymore, or what is the core threat?
Here, I don't know if it's an extreme scenario, but in terms of threats and what is on the mind of policymakers right now, certainly in Europe, but I think it's the same for Japan, the issue of export controls and dependency on critical raw materials, I think is on everybody's mind. And partly it's a timing issue because we've just had major restrictions imposed by China, lifted temporarily, but we have a major dependency on one supplier for a lot of critical raw materials, and one dependency which is very difficult to overcome because it takes time to develop these supply chains. So I think that's where the focus is, and maybe moving on a little bit to also what was announced yesterday, we had this economic security communication, and together with it we had basically a critical raw materials action plan, which is strengthening and accelerating policy initiative that we launched already in 2024, mobilizing more funding. So we have close to 3 billion euros funding that will be devoted to critical raw materials projects. We're looking at supporting companies in Europe, outside Europe, working with partners. And I think the reason why we started with critical raw materials in terms of the concrete initiatives we're rolling out is that it's on everybody's mind. And it's very clear that if we don't manage to address it, we have a major vulnerability that will touch on all the critical industries you mentioned, from defense to clean tech to semiconductors. So I think the extreme scenario and also maybe the solution we're trying to develop right now as a priority is certainly critical raw materials.
So I see, Mr. Inamura, you agree. Is there something that, from the Japanese perspective, as important as this raw material thing? And second question, why do Japan need Europe for being more resilient? Because sometimes I think there is an elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is when I'm attacked as a nation, or then I have to think, what can I do by myself, alone? Because in the world, you cannot rely on people for the next 100 years. We learned this in the last 10 years, that things we are relied on were blown away by different scenarios. And what is the importance of the EU from the perspective of Japan? To make Japan, because this egocentric approach should be always on the table, is more resilient in terms of economic security.
So for the first question, I agree with Adeline on the importance of critical mineral, and I think we have prepared many policy, including stockpile of critical mineral, which can be used, for example, policy best practice, which we can share with European colleagues, and so I think major threat. There are a lot of threats, and we can see in the short term and long term. And so critical mineral thing is one of the largest for the short term as a short term threat. For the long term, I agree with Mr. Duchatel that the hollowing out, or there might be a big issue if we cannot have effective policy measures. There's a lot of huge risk in many industrial sector where we can imagine that some overcapacity issues has caused severe damage on many manufacturing industry sector in Japan. So long-term issue is also big threat, I think. And on your second point, I believe that Japan and European countries can learn each other. So as I said, we might have some good practice in our policy on critical mineral. And also we can learn from European colleagues in their preparedness in many policy in area of economic security. So it's good European country has many national government which has different priority and different policy tools, and so, we often communicate with European country in ministerial level or director level, and then so we can have good feedback how they see the global situation, and we can get that best practice which we take for the consideration or development of economic security policies.
So I have a critical second question, and I ask as a German, if you as Japan has a good relationship with Germany and you can discuss all these things with Germany, why do you need the EU then?
Yes, I think that's a very good question.
Only a German is allowed to ask it.
We actually we have both contact with both European Commission and also with national government of Germany, and also with France, and
which makes my question much more important.
And in our view, each country have different strengths, and so if we have discussion with Germany, we share our strengths in industry, especially in machinery manufacturing industry. So we can share the same some information, which are quite important to develop Japan's policy in manufacturing industry. So, and if we talk with Europe, the focus and priority might be slightly different, but in both cases, they are very helpful for consideration of policies.
And from my point of view, it shows, of course, a country acts in all areas that are useful. So there are bilateral talks and with you, but I have to ask now, Adelie, when you hear, let's summarize it very unfairly, that it's possible to sideline the European Union because you can have the bilateral talks, what do you think in terms of the economic security question?
I think right now, economic security used to be dealt with exclusively at member states level. And we are trying to bring it at European level because we have realized that otherwise the weakest link is basically a threat to everybody. So I think right now what we're trying to do is very important to have a harmonized approach at European level so that we have the same level of economic security in the bloc. And I think it's more challenging in Europe than for one single government because security traditionally is more national. So what we're trying to do is really to work closely with member states. We've suggested in this paper that every member state should appoint a national economic security coordinator who could ask us, we could play the role of transmission and be our interlocutors. And I think the related challenge to this is working with businesses because we have multiple levels and often companies may talk more naturally to their national government than to the European level. So here as well, we are trying to develop more ties to companies, to develop mechanisms that enable this exchange of information. And here again, I think Japan has interesting practices, different committees that you work with and different ways to work with industry on stockpiling, for instance. So we're also looking at Japan for the way they work with their industry on exchanging information on risks or exchanging information on stockpiles and these kind of things. So more challenging at European level, but the only way we can do it is to bring together member states and the EU level.
Which is an important part of the whole thing. I think it's not described correctly if it's reduced to coordination, because in this coordination is a lot of power. So I very much would like to underline this important work you do there, and I can imagine that it's not only fun every day to coordinate 27 very strong countries. But we are already, Adeline already entered the part of solutions, because she was mentioning what can be improved, what is the kind of action plan. What do you see as the most important thing that Japan and Europe can do better together, more together, and improve in the collaboration?
Well, a lot is going on between the EU and Japan on economic security. Just 2 years ago, it was mostly intentions, and now we are really moving to a phase of very practical projects. So I think it's about expanding upon these ongoing projects. I will mention 3 briefly. A very good example of EU-Japan collaboration. Well, it's with one member state. The case of France, the CareMag, permanent magnet refining capacity that is being partly financed by JobMec is actually a very interesting project, because it will also respond to the market needs of Japan in some categories of permanent magnet. So it's really a good example of win-win. The second example that I can think of in the area of semiconductors is everything that is currently happening in Hokkaido between Rapidus and various key European players, IMEC for R&D, Fraunhofer. They're really key in the development of the Rapidus project, and that really brings together key strengths from the 2 sides. And the third one, and I really think that's where I see potential going forward for improvement in the area of economic intelligence, information sharing, because the EU is building its own economic intelligence capacity. It's actually very central in the document that was released yesterday. It's hard for the EU to position itself vis-à-vis member states, vis-à-vis companies, but everyone would like to have the bigger picture, so there is space for European institutions to play some sort of greater role in that area. And for future crises, you asked about crisis scenarios. I think being able to, when a crisis occurs, to exchange information immediately with key partners, I think it takes some prior work to build those exchanges, to build those communication channels. So that's, I think, one part of the way forward for EU and Japan.
And when I take what we heard in the beginning of this discussion, that it's sometimes very difficult for a government to share informations with companies in the own country, is it not a bit naive to think that then the sharing of information with other governments is a stable way to improve these things?
I can say something about that. We have a small group of companies in the Institute with whom we regularly exchange about information security. To summarize, they say two things. They say, we are reluctant to share information with governments, with European institutions, because we have many concerns about leaks, but we want information that we don't have and that only them have. So, there's something to build there. And in the strategy.
And let me. Sorry for interrupting. What can be built there? Because that's obviously a conflict of interests and a gap. So normally my instinct says we have to bridge this gap, but it seems to be a bit complicated.
Well, I think if you take the example of Nexperia, for example, many companies were affected. It shows them that they were not well prepared, that they should have worked better with governments. I think the experience of feeling the heat is an incentive to share more. That's the first thing. And the second thing, I noticed something really interesting in the document released by the EU, this idea of a network of trusted companies for information sharing. So having some kind of companies willing to share on the forefront with whom to build something in terms of information sharing.
Mr. Gubu, how sounded to you? Because he was the first one here on stage mentioning information. So because a former US Secretary of State was saying information is power, I'm pretty sure he's right. So what does it mean to you when you hear this sharing information between governments? Do you believe that will work? And what else we can improve between, especially between the European Union and Japan?
I think information sharing could work, but I think there will be several. It has to be a network between the trusted partners. So maybe each individual should be able to trust each other, or maybe we need a trust between institutions from certain company to certain ministry. And if they can have an experience of sharing information and gaining benefits through that, I think it would be a little more feasible for companies to share important information then. And in Japan, there is a legislative approach in that it's a so-called a security clearance system that was enacted this May, and it enables governments to share critical information to the private sector on the condition that that person could be trusted, so he or she has to go through a clearance procedure, but after that, the government will be able to share critical information to those individuals. So if there is, in addition to the trusted individuals, if there is some kind of legislative support or a mechanism, I think it would be easier to promote information sharing. And in addition to that, regarding your question about EU-Japan cooperation, from our perspective, we have a strong expectation in rules, establishing rules, and to expand the number of countries which abide those rules. because it is so clear that the two large countries are more and more starting to believe in powers rather than abiding to the rules. And I think EU and Japan are really important partners who uphold the rule of law and really act that those rules could work. So I think those rules-based system is essential for companies to engage businesses, especially when companies try to think about investing. A stable condition is essential, and those are, and the rules-based system is a fundamental of such conditions.
I think I agree. It's a very important point. But if you allow, I would like to stay 1 or 2 minutes more with the information question, because for me it's not very surprising. It's core, and I think for the whole topic it's core, because if we can manage a better information system, it helps to avoid crisis. And I take your word, if a crisis has already started, then it's hot enough for every country to do things and come to action. So if you want to avoid it, the information thing, Mr. Oya, is important. First, do you agree? Do you see another important thing, as important as the information, to avoid crisis? And third, if you agree, and it comes down to information between governments and companies, is then there a world of trusted companies and not trusted companies, because it creates a kind of two layers of companies that creates new problems or new challenges, let's say like this. What would you answer to this very, very long question?
Yeah, thank you. Long question. I think, of course, information is very important. And sharing the information between government and the companies, I mean private sector, and also between the multiple countries, this is very important, I think. And one element, as my friend mentioned, that Japan introduced that security clearance mechanism, and also maybe further effort needs probably, if we set up a mechanism that the information will not dilute it to any other country, any other person, that will give us credit, and it becomes easier for sharing information kind of things. So, some our strong domestic system for counter-espionage type of things, such kind of effort may be needed for us to receive sensitive information. But at the same time, another thing I want to mention is, of course, that information and also getting sensitive information is a good things and important things. But there are a lot of area of cooperation without, how should I say, considering such kind of sensitive information kind of things. Well, for example, that coordinating export control, or coordinating that investment screening type of things, or thinking about harmonization of standard setting, or WTO reform kind of things. Well, maybe we don't need any sensitive information kind of things. So yeah, I agree. Yes, sensitive information very important, but there are other areas too. We can foster cooperation among Europe and also Japan. And you also mentioned that are there any area where we can cooperate kind of things, except for information? Of course, there are a lot, I think. And I touched upon my first response to your first question. I think, platform for joint response to economic cohesion. This is very important. And I think this was mentioned, for example, that Hiroshima Summit joint statement 2023, and also foreign G7 statement. So for us to establish such kind of very solid platform, I think this can be deterrent. And it becomes very difficult for other countries to utilize interconnectedness. I think this is very important, and of course that the EU and Japan can cooperate in this area.
So thank you for that. Now I learn Japan needs Europe, Europe needs Japan, because there are natural partners in a lot of issues. But sadly, there are some other players around us. So, Adeline Hinderer, with a view or the perspective on the United States, we can say, I think there is an agreement on it. The European Union, Japan, and the United States are increasingly aligned, but also want strategic autonomy. That's a fundamental thing. And what do you think? Can the European Union and Japan coordinate with the United States without becoming overly dependent on Washington's agenda? Because I think it's a crucial question, because we all know it, and it's not on us to judge it now, but in the style of making politics, there were some changes with the second term of Donald Trump. So how would you see the importance of the cooperation with the United States for both of us in a way? And you can be sure you get the next question.
Well, I would say in general on economic security, the G7 has done a lot of work. You mentioned the principles. We've been discussing about supply chain resilience. We've been agreeing principles there. We still need to maybe get to the more practical level. So we all agree on the principles. Then implementing it is difficult. But the incentive there, I agree with you. There is a challenge, and there are some areas like defense where it's even more complicated to coordinate. But the incentive is the reduction of the cost if you cooperate, because scaling up certain, for instance, mining or diversifying supply chains is extremely expensive. If Japan, the EU, the US do it alone, you have the costs that are 3 times as much as if you do it together. So I think in some areas, and clearly developing these alternative rare earths, for instance, being gallium, molybdenum, and others, which all our industries need, it is much better if you can work on it together. And there are initiatives already underway where countries try to coordinate, identify funding needs in specific partners, see how maybe different partners can contribute for different forms of financial support. So I think this is one area where I definitely see scope for doing more.
So that means you already adapted the most important policy part of Donald Trump, because you mentioned costs and financial situations. So you answer already in his language.
No, I think cost is a real issue in Europe too.
I agree.
This is something that we have to be aware of. And one of the main challenges, I think, in our discussion with member states and businesses, you have to identify what are the major risks where it's worth paying the price premium for security and stability, and that cannot be across the board. So that's why we have to be more targeted and focused.
So, you mentioned it already. And do you fear a bit that with the US president in charge, that he maybe at some point come to the conclusion the best economic security is the security of the United States, and I'm not so much interested in the security of my partners? Do you have some of these ideas in your plannings, or do you think because of the advantages the collaboration with the United States create, it's a safe bet?
Yes, so we clearly see some potential for collaboration, not only with the United States, but also other like-minded countries to cope with the issue like supply of critical mineral, because it's the matter of supply and demand. And if specific country tries to limit the supply, and there's huge disruption in the market, and so as you see in the REA's export control, it has huge impact on the downstream industry, including auto manufacturing. But we now are rushing to invest in coal mine and refineries. Not only Japan, but also United States and European countries rushing to that. But once a specific country loosen their export control, there be too much supply in comparison with demand, and then that makes investment cases difficult to make business profit. So, and then this kind of fluctuation might happen. So, best way is to have some kind of agreement or collaboration to commit to such kind of investment to reduce our over-dependence on specific country. So in that case, in case of Japan and United States, we have agreed to have some very big investment deal, and which of course will involve some and cases on critical minerals. So I think this kind of shared goal and concrete action to reduce our overdependence on a specific supply source is quite useful.
Thank you for that. I really like the perspective of bringing ourselves, and when I say our, I mean this collaboration of the European Union with Japan in the driver's seat and not waiting for the others. I think that's another important action plan in a way for this topic, and not only this topic. And with this in mind, we are already reaching our final round, and I would like to try something with you, because there is so much expertise on this stage. We all have seen a lot of panel discussions, and I already say thank you for the rich exchange. But maybe we can produce a definite action plan now. The action plan of the 4th of December 2025 when it comes down to economic security. And so I have a question for all of you, and please answer it. Maybe you can start and we go like this. So Japan, the host country, has the last word. And the question is, if you could choose one priority action on EU-Japan economic security for the next 12 months, what would it be? And I take notes because that will be our declaration of today.
Well, for me, it's about rulemaking. So next year, G7 will be chaired by France, and G20 will be chaired by the United States. And I think Japan and EU have a great role to play in both formula. And I really expect that many of the issues that was discussed today, such as independently caused by excess capacity, or I think those root causes are like market destroying subsidies. And I think it is essential to have rules of discipline on those issues. And another point that I understand that the G7 is trying right now is to promote the non-price criteria. So I think there was a discussion that how much premium would be feasible for paying additional prices. But considering the non-price criteria is to evaluate the stability of supply or security issues, and if those values are considered as praiseworthy, I think supply would increase in those areas. So, and I hope that EU and Japan would take the lead in making those rules or disciplines or those norms to spread to the G7, G20, and hopefully more broader.
Thank you for that, Mathieu.
I would say prioritize structuring the information sharing / economic intelligence relationship in the next year. I think there's a negotiation going on as part of the defense and security partnership. I understand it's a difficult one. There are other aspects regarding economic security other than the defense sector or arms production that should be explored. And I would say, build on the supply chain early warning mechanism built for semiconductors. And one very practical way to advance this would be for the EU and Japan to get together to really simulate a supply chain crisis and how it would affect their relationship. Would they be able to really work together and help each other solve their problem? I noticed doing simulations in the past that one thing that can escape the attention of policy makers is the potential for escalation, because you have to deal with a developing event and to detect the potential for escalation of a crisis. I think it really takes also geopolitical expertise in the room, so it's really about sharing among different parts of governments, and I think the two sides really have something to bring to each other in that regard.
Yes.
So we haven't talked very much about research and innovation today, but it's very relevant in the EU-Japan context, because Japan is in the final stretch of negotiations on its accession to Horizon Europe, which is our flagship research and innovation project. And hopefully we will get there. And if that is the case, there will be very interesting opportunities, because we will launch specific projects on critical raw materials, some of them for funding projects in third countries along the critical raw material value chain, and other projects that are related more to circular economy, identifying ways to recycle critical raw materials or identifying alternatives to these critical raw materials. And there's a lot of talent in Japan in terms of research institutions, companies, so we would really hope that we can work together with Japan on finding these alternatives and new ways of producing. Looking forward and hoping that this will be possible.
Good, great.
Yes, I think, platform for joint response to economic cohesion, this is very important, but I already talked this too much. So I want to take another one that is joint finance for some project. Can be layered kind of things, or can be that infrastructure, but EU-Japan joint finance for project in Global South, because Global South is very important for us. So not just cooperation between EU and Japan, but also that we cooperate together and getting some not approval, but cooperation from Global South. This is very important. For doing that, financing very beneficial project, not only beneficial to EU and Japan, but also beneficial to Global South. This is very important. And fortunately, European country has a bilateral governmental financial institution, and they have EIB, and they have EBRD too. EBRD is multilateral, so a little bit different nature, but EBRD is very European-oriented institution. They have such kind of institution. And Japan has JBIC, JICA, NEXI, JOGMEC, many institutions. So we can cooperate and we can finance jointly. And one footnote is for us to cooperate, it's very important for us to reduce doing business with us. Several institution finance, and we request a little bit different form of question to single borrower or borrowing countries. This will increase cost. So in that sense, we need to trust each institution, and we rely on such institutions, lead institutions' due diligence that will reduce cost from the viewpoint of Global South, and that will benefit EU, Japan, and also Global South countries.
From Japanese government perspective, I think communication is most important thing. There are many opportunities for concrete joint projects like, as Mr. Duchatel mentioned, that the Calimag project in southern France is a typical one where a Japanese government-sponsored agency invests in French refinery project of heavy rares. And also we can see some kind of these new projects to strengthen our economic security in the pipeline. But also we can be ambitious to expect some new rule making in the area of global trade or investment. But this kind of new rule making will take time, and I think the coordination among European countries might be difficult, and even inside Japanese government it will take time. So we will keep sharing information and sharing our threat and our best practice, and then we can wait for the timing to see the window opens for specific policy. Sometime very ambitious one we can get, and so it's we just have to keep communicating with our counterpart in Europe.
So thank you very much. It's a perfect summary and the perfect thing. If this would be the steering committee for improving the EU-Japan collaboration in terms of economic security, we would have some projects ahead of us in the next 12 months. First, G7 and G20 are key in a way as a format, not to underestimate. Then, of course, a communication issue, maybe having more formats of sharing best practices, and like you mentioned, a early warning mechanism, establish it. I'm pretty sure it exists, but everything can be improved. That would be on our 12 months list. Of course, underlining the importance of the critical raw material thing, because it's key for everything. And what I think is a very, very important issue in our 12 months program is bringing the talents together, because that's in a way the resource for everything. Bringing talents together means sharing information, means sharing best practices, means making clear that we belong in a way together, and Japan needs Europe and Europe needs Japan. So thank you for that. If I would like to add a wish, it would be let's build this bridge every day, because it's an everyday business. Thank you very much for this discussion and for the rich exchange. Thank you.